All right, we got him back. Ty, it's been a tough go this year for both of us. I mean, it doesn't seem like that long ago that we were named the Saturdays, but hey, I really don't care. My first question here has nothing to do with what we were talking about. It really just has to do with the fact that yesterday at around 3:30, I was like, am I really going to do a podcast about this Florida State Virginia Tech game? I sat down and I watched the whole thing. Granted, I watched it in Baton Rouge, but it was the weirdest I've ever felt watching a game because the whole week it was us versus Jimmy Sexton, and then we're against Tommy Castellanos. And I gotta be honest, I love the team. I want to win every game. I didn't give a damn about that game. So what is the weirdest you've ever felt watching a game? Because that is what it felt like for Hokie fans this week.
The weirdest I've ever felt watching a game? I was at the Penn State Nebraska game right after Joe Paterno got fired.
Yeah, it's a little weirder.
And let me tell you, I've never been and I mean, obviously a huge stadium, Beaver Stadium, right? I have never been in a setting like that, which felt to me like the world's largest outdoor funeral. Mm-hmm. It was like sullen, and the crowd didn't really know if they could cheer or what was going on. I mean, these are strange times in State College, and I don't wish to relive them anytime soon. Sure. But in terms of, for me, what was the weirdest? That by a landslide. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for those who are not familiar, I think actually, usually you want to talk about Virginia Tech first, but I actually want to give you an opportunity here to speak for Penn State. And I just got off with Jake Crane, and we talked about Ole Miss and how if that job opens, it makes things a little bit peculiar for Penn State. And it's not that I'm saying Penn State is not a better job than Ole Miss. It's just here we are with Penn State, and the best candidate, I think, for the Penn State job just took the Virginia Tech job after being fired by Penn State. And everybody that I'm talking to about this, I'm asking them, what was your opinion of James Franklin being let go if they had not watched your show? And where are you on this search? Like, are you starting to get the creepy crawlies? Are you starting to feel a little hot?
Well, I mean, the ground has shifted from underneath Pat Kraft and Penn State, because you may recall when they made this move, mm-hmm. It was clear far and away Penn State was the best job on the board. No disrespect to Virginia Tech, mm-hmm. But in my opinion, Penn State was like the 8,000-pound gorilla. But then what happened shortly thereafter? The Florida job opened up. The LSU job opened up. There may be other jobs that open up here over the last couple of weeks. Who knows? It's just one of those cycles, and it's just very crowded. So to that end, I'm not going to say it gives me the creepy crawlies, but there have been other coaching carousels over the years that struck a very similar tenor, in that suddenly there were a bunch of other openings. And like the one that I'm reminded of often is South Carolina way back when fired their coach early because they thought they could get Tom Herman. They didn't end up getting Tom Herman. They ended up going a much different direction that definitely did not excite the fan base. So I do worry a little bit about that on the Penn State side. And I would say, generally speaking, my opinion on Franklin, when James Franklin took the job at Penn State, I had talked to a great number of people who were much closer to the program, let's say, than me. And they were very mixed on Franklin initially. And the reason they felt that way is, and it was communicated to me on more than one occasion, that this guy's a snake oil salesman. He knows what to say. He's very smooth in saying it. He's got some of like the cheesy coaching speak that I think we're all accustomed to at this point. But snake oil salesman was how he was, I guess, labeled. And over the course of time, that tended to wear off. One by one of the people who told me that, people stopped saying that. And he won them over one by one, very gradually over the course of, many years in State College. And now I always liked the guy, but I was never as close to James Franklin as some of the people who were telling me this. And even though it did not go according to the plan this year, I do tend to agree with you. He may still be the best candidate for the Penn State job. I also believe that there is some value in a change of scenery. there's a pretty good chance that whoever Penn State hires next is not going to have the accolades of James Franklin. There's a pretty good chance that's going to happen. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because even in the best of relationships, sometimes they plateau. And sometimes a change of scenery can go a long way towards really helping both parties. And so I'm going to hope that that's where Penn State's at right now with this coaching search, that even if they don't get a name that's as accomplished as Franklin, and I guess we could debate the merits of that, but I'm hoping that a change of scenery for all involved is going to help in the end. And I will admit, just as like a final point, seeing James Franklin take another job so close to Penn State, kind of in the greater Mid-Atlantic region, it does make me kind of sad. Like, there's a little bit of melancholy here, because it's kind of hard to see him go to a place that's so close. Penn State and Virginia Tech are, I think, pretty close institutions over the last 15 years or so. And so I'm happy for Virginia Tech. I think they're getting a really good coach. And at the same time, I am admittedly a little sad as an alum to see James Franklin walk out the door.
A couple of directions I want to go. First of all, Pat brought this up. Jim Weaver, the old athletic director at Virginia Tech back in the 2000s, actually said that his goal for Virginia Tech was to become a mini Penn State. And I think that he would be smiling pretty hard to see that James Franklin is coming here to Virginia Tech. The first thing that I want to hit on here is the experience with, I don't know if you've seen it. I've been pounding the drum for James Franklin, like just about as hard as anybody in the universe. And we would have had quite a bit of egg on our face if he did not end up at Virginia Tech. And it's crazy to think that this went from, oh my God, Penn State fired him. Well, obviously I'd take him. And then it seemed like most people out of nowhere were just like, absolutely not, crazy, don't do that. And it's just like, well, if you think about it for more than like 15 seconds, this is the most credentialed coach in the history of the ACC, outside of Bill Belichick, if you want to count his NFL accolades, to come into the conference. Like, this is the biggest no-brainer of no-brainers, and it's fallen into Virginia Tech's lap. And to watch it progress from impossible to possible to likely going to happen to then 3 weeks of time going by and then it happening, like, did you even think this was remotely a possibility when he was handed his keys and told to leave Penn State?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because Virginia Tech, I think, is a good job. And I know you guys have covered it at length, how there's been a renewed commitment to the football program to inject all this money into it, to really make it a priority. And that's obviously going to be attractive to a premier coaching talent like James Franklin. So I thought there was absolutely a possibility. What kind of surprised me, though, is that he took the job when he took the job.
Yes.
Because James Franklin, over the years, despite the fact that he never actually left Penn State, I mean, he did kind of dip his toes in other waters. I mean, he tried twice to go to USC. It didn't really work. There were other rumors of potential interest here and there, but he was kind of a Penn State stalwart, and at the same time knew how to play the leverage game with his agent. It was Trace Armstrong for a while. He switched over to Jimmy Sexton not too long ago. He's just always been really good at kind of leveraging other coaching vacancies to get himself a better deal at Penn State. So my assumption was that he was going to see this thing through, see if any other jobs open up. Who knows what that could be? Obviously, it's a very active cycle. And then he would jump on something as soon as the season was over. That was my expectation. I didn't think he would sign on this quickly, but I'm sure his guys got the ear to the ground. They have a pretty good sense for what's going to open and what won't. And he decided that this was the best place for him. So that I'm not surprised he took Tech. I'm a little bit more surprised at the timing.
You're surprised at the timing. I'm surprised that Florida State seemingly let this pass them by. Like, lost in kind of the surprisingness of Virginia Tech landing James Franklin and the timing of all of it. Like, how asleep at the wheel is Florida State to let this opportunity pass them by? And a lot of Virginia Tech fans, I feel like they got the sentiment where, like, oh, does he think he's better than Virginia Tech to go to Florida State? I mean, newsflash, like, he absolutely should have. I have zero problem with him entertaining, at least trying to see what his options are before committing to a school. And Virginia Tech negotiated from a point of zero leverage. Like everybody was like, well, we should just move on. You tell James Franklin you're moving on and he comes back 5 minutes after you said that and he wants to sign his contract, he's getting the contract. So for Virginia Tech to get this over the line with no leverage and Florida State just falling asleep at the wheel, it legitimately is a stars aligned situation, at least for my seat.
Yeah, I mean, I think Florida State, like many of the other schools around the country that now have openings, even like Penn State, I mean, they're all kind of in the same boat. And Florida State may be looking from afar and asking itself, do we really want to be like the, I don't know, third best job that's on the market right now? I think Wisconsin had a similar calculation when they decided to keep Luke Fickell. Now, Wisconsin and Florida State are in different quadrants altogether, but I understand the value in not wanting to put yourself lower on the totem pole and wanting to position yourself if you do make a coaching change so that you're one of the premier jobs available on the market. And, I find it hard to believe Florida State wouldn't be a premier job if it did come open, but there is also that added element of Mike Norvell has an enormous buyout, much the way James Franklin did at Penn State. I don't know what their financial situation is. It wasn't all that long ago that Drew Weatherford was taking from place to place ideas of private capital in college football. So wherever things stand on the Florida State financial side of things probably had a part to play in this as well. They still could decide that they want to move on past Norvell because they're not going to do their little postseason evaluation until, the postseason. So we'll see. I mean, maybe they'll make a move, maybe they won't, but it's just a very crowded coaching market right now in terms of other openings out there. And I understand the logic in not wanting to put yourself in really uncertain territory, not knowing who's going to be willing to move and who won't. Lane Kiffin is obviously the big domino, not to say he's a candidate for Florida State or really anywhere else, but I think there is real value, as we have seen, in coaches who have it pretty good at their current stop, wanting to just sign an extension and keep it going because there's just so much uncertainty, both on the coaching side as well as on the school side.
How do you view this hire for Virginia Tech? And I was just talking about this with Jake as well. It's not as much credentials that he brings in on a piece of paper, right? Now that's obviously important, but I look at a guy like Bob Chesney. I look at a guy like Manny Diaz. I look at a guy like PJ Fleck, and I actually think they're really good coaches. I think the way that the game has changed, though, is that if you bring them in, you have a lot of donors who are saying they got to show me before I'm given any type of dollars. When you hire James Franklin, it is the biggest we are all in and we are being serious move that you can imagine. And I think that's where I got to a place where with this hire being discussed, I was like, I won't be mad if we don't hire him. I will, however, be very devastated because I know that we did everything that we could, and the donor support would not be the same with anybody else. But how should Virginia Tech fans feel about this hire?
I think it's a home run. I think of the available options and certainly the available timing. Virginia Tech got the best of both worlds. They don't have to now drag this search on into early December. They got their guy, and they might have gotten the best coach available on the market. It didn't work out at Penn State, and, we don't necessarily need to rehash that. But, I think what really works for me when I think of James Franklin and Virginia Tech is the fact that just think of where college football is at right now. Think of how we've had some of the older coaches walk away because it's a little too much of a recruiting game. It's too much in the portal, too much in NIL. They just want to coach football. At least that used to be the old mantra. Now, look at the guys who have really bubbled up and become something big. Marcus Freeman, dogged recruiter. Dan Lanning, dogged recruiter. Lane Kiffin, a portal master, the portal king, right? All of these guys who have a propensity to really recruit and really go hard at building a program. James Franklin has always been that guy.
Yeah.
He's always been that guy. And so I think if I'm a Virginia Tech fan, I look at the program honestly and I say, well, what do we need right now? Virginia Tech's most recent accomplishment, to my eye, was a victory in the 2016 Belk Bowl. Okay? And I'm not even saying that as a pejorative, but that's sort of where this program's been at.
Yeah.
And true. I understand the concern about James Franklin in game or winning the big games. And for sure, all of that stuff was territory that I am very familiar with as a Penn State alum. Virginia Tech needs a program builder.
We're just trying to be Pitt.
They need a program builder. They need somebody who can come in, who can rip this thing down to the studs, who can energize the base, who can energize recruits and make it feel like this is going to be a fresh start for the whole thing. James Franklin, say what you want about against top 25 opponents, but James Franklin is very good at this part. He's among the best at this part, which is building a program from the ground up. And, consider the fact that at his previous stops, it took a lot longer to get to the point where it felt like the program was built back up because the rules were different. And so I think in the current climate, given the renewed commitment now to football at Virginia Tech, and given his obvious ability to attract talent, he's going to be able to reboot that program very quickly. Like, I'm not going to go out on a limb and make any bold predictions for 2026, but it wouldn't surprise me if a year and a half, 2 years down the line, Virginia Tech feels like they're kind of back. Maybe not back to the extent that they're, Frank Beamer era Virginia Tech, but back to the point where we can realistically talk about the Hokies as part of an ACC conversation. It's all there, and this is a guy who can do that very quickly, especially given the current climate. So I don't see any two ways about it. To me, this looks like a slam dunk for Tech, and they got the exact kind of guy that I think they need to make this thing, special again.
I'll tell you what, you mentioned the Belk Bowl. This is actually the biggest win that we've had and the second win over Arkansas that we've had. It's been fun to watch the Arkansas Virginia Tech dialogue go back and forth. And I think it just kind of sets into the way to look at what is a good job. A good job is not always, do you have a waterfall in your office? It's, what is my path to making it to the college football playoff? And I think there's really is no debate. The path is easier by playing Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, and Virginia every single year than playing Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. So I think that's where what it really boils down to. But the James Franklin experience, like, get ready to learn James Franklin, buddy. You've lived it. You understand it. We know all about the good in recruiting, the good in Keegan-Michael Key. I think Buzz Williams is a good comp because you're forced to have an opinion on him.
Right.
He doesn't really do anything outlandish to make you hate them, except take all of your recruits from Virginia. But what are some things Virginia Tech fans should be ready for, whether it's at the press conferences, whether it's in recruiting, or things that we may not be thinking about?
Well, I think first and foremost, where you'll see the biggest impact is in the recruiting game. He is going to hit the trail hard. He's going to hit it right away. There's already been something of an exodus at Penn State, as you would expect anytime there's a coaching change, but it wouldn't surprise me if a bunch of those recruits who are committed to Penn State now give Virginia Tech a look because they were committing to play for James Franklin as opposed to playing for Penn State. So if you are Virginia Tech, you'll take that, right? An influx of talent is never a bad thing. He's been very, very good, I would say, for the most part, at hiring assistants, and that's something that I think goes overlooked. He hasn't hit on all of them, but he's generally been very, very good at hiring guys around him, many of whom have gone on to be head coaches elsewhere, as I'm sure you know, as a Virginia Tech fan. Even though the Pry thing didn't work out, I don't know if he's welcome back as a defensive coordinator, but all that to say is I think he's got a really good eye for coaching talent. And he's just as good a recruiter at getting those guys to come and coach under him as he is getting guys to come and play for him. So that's a good thing. And I would say, furthermore, on the issue of assembling talent and what it looks like, he's been very good at spotting defensive talent. Penn State has very much had this track record for putting out stellar defenses year in and year out. And some of that is, it hit critical mass and talent attracts other talent and guys want to come there because they want to go in the league like Micah Parsons or whoever, right? But he's been very, very good at sort of building this recruiting mechanism that eventually gets to a point where it kind of recruits itself. He builds a track record in, and suddenly you've got guys that just want to come there and they just start looking up a place like Penn State or now Virginia Tech as opposed to having a coach reach out to them because they want the player to come to them. A lot of times it was sort of the other way around. So I think that's all very, very exciting to now kind of have this essentially like lead magnet at the very top of the program who can attract talent both on the player side as well as the coaching side. The other thing that I would say, and this isn't so much for, I guess, the people listening to this as it is for you. James Franklin absolutely reads and listens to everything about him.
Really?
Everything. And I don't know what his podcasting habits are. I don't know what he listens to, but it was pretty well known in the Penn State community, at least among the people that covered Franklin, that he always had his ear to the ground and he knew what people were saying. There is no doubt in my mind that he had a pretty good understanding for where the Penn State fan base was at. Not only because they were chanting Fire Franklin towards the end, but even in the run up to that, I think he had a lot of pressure on him that he felt from the fan base because he read and listened to a lot of stuff online and knew that this was supposed to be the year at Penn State. And if not, there were going to be some issues. So he will know what people are saying about him. He will definitely have a pretty good sense for where the fan base is at. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but just be advised.
Yeah. Hyper aware of everything that's going on. And honestly, one of the more unique situations that I can ever remember. And I'd say this too, it reminds me a lot of Calipari and his time at Kentucky. And yes, Calipari won the national championship, but unless you're the best coach of all time in Nick Saban, at some point your message becomes stale. It happened with Les Miles at LSU. It happened with Calipari at Kentucky. It happens with Rick Pitino, who's one of the best basketball coaches ever, about every 5 years, wherever Rick Pitino is. So my other question, and I think this is important for Virginia Tech specifically, like, is he the kind of guy, because Virginia Tech's athletic department, we got a lot of stuff going on. Sure. Like we really do. And I think an aspect of him coming in and being like, I know what this is supposed to look like, and this ain't it, or this is it, or these are some changes that we need to make. Do you anticipate that that's something that he will do, or how do you think that that's necessarily going to play out?
He was pretty active on that front up at Penn State. I mean, to an annoying degree from time to time.
Annoying to the staffers or annoying to you? Or
no, I think annoying to the administration.
Okay.
And it wasn't until Pat Kraft became the AD that it felt like there was, you hear alignment all the time, but it wasn't until Kraft became the AD that it felt like there was full alignment between what Franklin wanted, what Franklin felt he needed for the program, and what the administration was willing to give. This is not to say the administration was ever really shorting Penn State football. It's obviously a cash cow, but these guys are very detail oriented. They have a very strong vision. At least the good coaches have a strong vision for what they think it needs to look like. And Franklin is no different in that regard. So, I mean, you could obviously speak to the inner workings of the Virginia Tech program much better than I could, but I can tell you that at least in his time at Penn State, he was pretty hands-on and pretty descriptive about what he thought the program needed to move forward. Be it renovations to a football building down to, some of the more minute details within the practice facility itself. These guys are just sort of always on. They know what their vision is. And again, the good ones are able to communicate that in a way and have the results to back it up that they can continue to get what they want.
I think that's in a large case what Virginia Tech needs. I think that's what we saw. What's interesting is with Buzz Williams completely closed himself off and existed in a closet where he didn't care about what anybody said except his players and his coaches.
Right.
If James Franklin comes in and he's almost like, I don't know what the opposite of an infection is. Like, what is a positive version of an infection? Like a white blood cell? I don't know. But him coming in the building and rising that building and helping it get a little bit of a facelift, which it has needed for years to think differently. I think that's a huge positive. If you were to point to something that drove you crazy, something, whether it's at the podium or something in-game situation, what are some of the things in the James Franklin experience that you are hoping he learned from maybe at his Penn State time?
Didn't really develop a quarterback
Mm-hmm.
in his time at Penn State. I think for as good as he's been hiring staff, he very clearly went for splash hires down the stretch. And I like Andy Kotelnicki a lot. I obviously like Jim Knowles a lot. But I think those were hires almost more from the standpoint of exciting the fan base as opposed to being like a great schematic fit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Andy Kotelnicki's an offensive line guy. That's his pedigree. And at Kansas before he, just as an example, at Kansas before he got to Penn State, he had obviously a dual threat quarterback in Jalen Daniels and a really good running game. For people who don't follow Kansas football, it was a really solid ground game. In theory, that should translate to Penn State, or should have translated to Penn State over the last 2 years with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Right. But the quarterback, I think, was something of a mismatch. Drew Aller just was not the same style quarterback. In retrospect, maybe Bo Pribula was more of the kind of guy that they should have had to run that scheme. And so the quarterback thing has like, with the exception of the times that he caught lightning in a bottle, I'm thinking of like Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley. With kind of rare exception, he's had serviceable quarterbacks, but none that I think we could definitively say got way better from start to finish and very much lived up to the hype. And Aller's probably the best example of that. So that's the first thing I would say. You know, there have been some developmental questions, I think, elsewhere. And part of that might have something to do with some of the staffing decisions over the last couple years at Virginia Tech. Case in point, wide receiver. Penn State was sort of known for putting wide receivers into the NFL. They had many good wide receivers come through State College, but not recently. Recently, it's been about tight end, but they really haven't gotten much production out wide, and that's been a huge fly in the ointment, or it was a fly in the ointment for James Franklin at Penn State these last couple of years. Not having that element to the game, it almost kind of hamstrung them in some of these big game situations. So that for sure is something that I would point to, just some general developmental questions on the offensive side of the ball. The hiring practices, though, for the most part, they've been very, very good. I do question his decision down the stretch here, and some of that may have been due to the pressure. It may have been due to expectations that he went in the way that he did. I guess the only other thing that I would say that drove me crazy, and this is sort of well documented at this point, but the reason that we're even having this conversation is because James Franklin had a hard time against the best in the conference. And down the stretch, before he was relieved of command, Penn State was very much trying to become the Ohio State of the Big Ten. And he couldn't get there. Had a lot of talent, had a lot of the other pieces in place. Maybe Drew Aller wasn't the guy. Maybe the guys that they had on the roster were, it was the wrong grouping of personnel. We could probably do 5 hours worth on why that didn't work. But the inability to win the big game, despite having all of that talent in place down the stretch, was obviously the kind of thing that, you know, as an alumni, it's going to drive you crazy. It's going to drive you crazy. It was a very fortunate situation to be in. Just a year ago, they were in the college football playoff semifinals. So it really wasn't that bad in retrospect, but that constant inability to win the big one eventually just wore everybody down.
It's going to be interesting to watch. It is the biggest swinging to walk into that building in a very, very, very long time. We were talking about this last night. Like, if you think about, oh my gosh, Virginia Tech did what? And the last time you were on this podcast, I said all those people text me when we lose to Vanderbilt, lose to ODU, and lose to Wake Forest. The last time that something like this happened was us bringing back our 2-star women's basketball players. Like that was the first thing that I can think of. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. It never goes this way. So I think my overall thoughts on it are carte blanche, like whatever he wants to do, he's got enough proof that he will win most of his games. And that would be certainly an improvement over where we are today. And it is fascinating to see how this all worked out. Couple last ones before I let you go. I've asked everybody, what the surprise job you believe is going to open. I'm with you. We have seen some really good coaches retire early or leave the sport or go to the NFL. And Josh Pate, he gave USC. I originally was going to go with Clemson, but I think that's a bit of a cop-out. Jake gave Utah. I'm actually going to give Ohio State because I think I can see Ryan Day being like, you know what? I've won this damn thing twice. I've kind of had enough. Now, you may not love him to hang it up because I think Heartline to Penn State is something that you would welcome and a lot of Penn State folks would welcome, and that would be crazy if that job came open. But I'll go with Ohio State just with a guy who's accomplished everything in this game. And it's like, you know what? I kind of do just want to coach football.
So I can say the USC rumors are real. Mm-hmm. And those have been circulating for a while, even before Josh, kind of brought it more into the public sphere. Mm-hmm. And so that would not surprise me. And as I said earlier, I know that James Franklin very much desires that USC job. And so part of me was wondering if he would wait and see if those rumors came to fruition.
I hope that buyout is nice and juicy then, if that's the case.
Part of me was wondering if that was the hang up, just because I know for certain that that's a job that he tried to get.
Can I just ask, since we're on the subject and people are going to ask, why does he covet that job? He has no recruiting connections out there. He's lived in Happy Valley and he lives in Blacksburg. You're telling me that he wants to go to Los Angeles?
I have heard, I heard very early on was that he desired moving to a bigger place.
Interesting.
And, a big city. And there's only a select number of jobs that are good jobs in college football that are that close to a city. Let's be real. I mean, there's a lot of rural and suburban spots that have premier college football teams. And so that, that among other reasons, I think that was sort of the main thing that had been communicated to me. And I was waiting to see if that was actually going to be a thing this cycle with USC, because like I said, the rumors were out there. Yeah. And obviously if that job opened at the right at the right time, James Franklin might have jumped on it, but he decided for this track instead. I'm going to throw out Washington. I'm going to throw out Washington because Jedd Fisch is a serial job job jumper.
Okay.
Job hunter. I think there is a chance that he could be in the running at UCLA. I know that UCLA is looking at a guy like a Bob Chesney, who's also in the state of Virginia, who I think would be a good hire. But Jedd Fisch has some West Coast connections. I think the more likely scenario is that Jedd Fisch ends up at Florida right now.
Wow.
If it's not Lane Kiffin.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jedd Fisch, you may recall there was a storyline not that long ago that his family stayed in Tucson and he was working the gig up in Washington. There are also rumors out there that maybe Jedd Fisch is looking to get out of Seattle. I've never been to Seattle. I've heard it's wonderful. So I can't speak to this directly. I'm only kind of speculating based on some of the rumors that I've heard, but it would not surprise me if he decided to take his talents elsewhere and there was suddenly an opening in the Pacific Northwest.
It's fascinating, Ty, and I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be fascinating next year because you were mentioning some of the programs afraid to fire a coach like a Florida State, and I'll tell you what, I really thought this was going to be our next coach. I mean, if you're South Carolina, are you really going to jump into this coaching search right now? There were a lot of rumors that South Carolina was angling themselves to end up with James Franklin and to do a nice little swap with Virginia Tech. I mean, I think the carousel, it's not going to be as crazy because I don't think some of those big jobs will come open next year. But in terms of like those medium tier 1B jobs, they're going to be open next year because there are some coaches that are just going to be the walking dead coming into next season.
For a long time in this sport, there were a couple coaches that drove everybody crazy. And the best example of that is obviously Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Nick Saban got to Alabama in 2007. And between the time that he started and left, every program, literally every program in the SEC turned over their coach at least once. Everybody wanted to be Alabama, and nobody could be Alabama because there was only one Nick Saban. But he drove everybody crazy. I don't know if we're at this point now in college football. Obviously Nick Saban is done, and I don't know if there is that one coach that everybody is aspiring to try and model their program and model everything after. But I think the new thing that's going to drive everybody bonkers is this college football playoff, because the field is now expanded, and that benefits teams like Virginia Tech. It benefited a team like Penn State, benefits teams like Tennessee, like Ole Miss, programs that historically, given the way of the old world, they were left out in the cold. They were playing in a good bowl game. But now it's all there. Now, if you have a 10-2 season in a major conference, there's a pretty good chance you're going to qualify for the playoff. And bigger programs that fashion themselves football schools not qualifying for that playoff, it's going to drive them crazy. It did drive a bunch of programs crazy this year. I think some of them have had the wherewithal now, given the climate, to realize we don't want to deal with this right now. Like we'd be better off waiting a year, reinvesting. So almost exactly what Wisconsin is doing. Nobody at Wisconsin is crazy about Luke Fickell and what he's built. Nobody. Not anybody is crazy. Not even Luke Fickell is crazy about what they've built at Wisconsin. But they have made the calculation, as Maryland just announced this week as well. They've made the calculation. We're going to take that buyout money and we're going to put it into acquiring talent. We're going to try and jumpstart this program a different way. But if it doesn't work again, I still expect many of the same programs will again be driven crazy by not even being in the playoff conversation. And that's where we're going to see more of this turnover. So we didn't see it last year. There were only like 5 openings on the Power 4 or 5 level. But I think this year was the year that it really hit the fan for a bunch of schools that think they should be shooting a little bit higher. And I don't think next year will be quite as active, but there is no shortage of programs that are probably going to lay low, try to reinvest for a year, and if it doesn't work out, they'll be on the market.
I've never heard that comparison to Nick Saban to the college football playoff, and it's 100% so true. It's a shame that we've gone from, the Alamo Bowl meaning something. Well, it still means something because it gets Shedeur Sanders' number retired. But it's a shame that the Camping World Independent Bowl doesn't mean anything, and all of these different bowl games used to be able to hang your hat on that. And we've gone from now you can't even keep up with who's playing on the team. You can't keep up with who's coaching the team anymore. And I want to be upset about it, but this has been one of the most fun college football regular seasons we've had in a long time. For all of the complaining and all of the nonsense and all of the crap in the offseason, the games still rock. The games are awesome. So,
and I mean, the other side of that too, and I've been doing this long enough. I've obviously got more than my fair share of exposure to all sides of the playoff versus non-playoff argument, and it's ruining college football. No, it isn't. It's good for college football. No, I've heard it all a million times at this point. But what is, I think, still true, regardless of the postseason format, and maybe it's got a lot to do with just how college football is set up in that nobody's really in charge of this thing. There's never a shortage of controversy.
No.
We talk about recruiting being the lifeblood of the sport. That's what brings the talent in now, whether it's high school, whether it's the portal, however you can get it. You need talent if you're going to go anywhere. It helps to have a good coach. You don't always need a good coach. You need to have the talent. From a fan's perspective, the thing that has always driven college football is this controversy. The David versus Goliath, the push, the pull there, that dynamic is what makes this special. And it's not great all the time if you're like an Eastern Michigan fan. But if you're a fan of a bigger school, if you're a fan of Notre Dame, Miami, Virginia Tech, whoever, there is no shortage of controversy that keeps the fan bases engaged and keeps everybody sort of interested in what's going on. And I think for schools like Tech, certainly like Penn State, having a little bit of a safety net where you can drop one, in some cases two, and still play for something meaningful at the end of the year. I don't know. I still have not found that to be less interesting than what we had before.
It's hard not to end on that positive note. Ty, I appreciate it. Please check out Ty and the Solid Verbal. They do an absolutely fantastic job. I'm not going to let you leave without telling me, though, who do you want? Who do you want coaching the Nittany Lions next year? It's been all over the place. I mean, Dable, I think even a guy like the thing that sucks, Ty, is I think a guy like Bob Chesney would do a really good job at Virginia Tech if he was hired here in 2015. If he was hired here before NIL. But the thing with James Franklin is once you open your mind up to, oh my gosh, we might make this super serious move. As soon as it's Diaz, as soon as it's Fleck, as soon as it's Chesney, you go from, well, he's got to show me first. He's got to show me first.
Right.
So while I think a Chesney can do good at Penn State, I think it'd be great for Boston College. You need to make sure that it's still splashy enough to get donors on board with what Kraft is pitching and what this new coach is going to bring to the table.
It's a really complicated question now. I believe for a very long time, and people who listen to my show know this, and it has since crashed and burned, that I had it on good accord 5 years ago that Matt Rule was going to be the next coach at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like an open secret. There's a reason why when this job came open, everybody put Matt Rule at the top of the list right away. Everybody knew it too. It wasn't like I was the only one. So Matt Rule, given his connections and whatever you want to say about Matt Rule's coaching accolades, that's totally separate. But given his connections, especially now with Pat Kraft, it was sort of widely assumed that was going to be the direction that Penn State went. I'm still not fully convinced they don't go in that direction. Yeah. Okay. Just to be clear, I still think there's a chance out of left field where maybe something like that could go down. I know that Penn State views its job through the lens of they want to get somebody who has done it before in there. And I think they're a little bit leery about handing the keys over to a hotshot coordinator. I'm not sure I fully share that sentiment, but it at least seems like that is where they're at when they're thinking about this next hire. So I think we'd be remiss to not consider current head coaches first. And so I think they'll probably take a shot at Eli Drinkwitz. I don't know if Eli Drinkwitz is at all interested, but it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to make a run at him. I did see Brian Dable's name. Brian Dable, I believe, has a son who is currently at Penn State. I could be wrong about that, but the New York Post had a picture of him the day after he got fired. Hilarious. Wearing a Penn State hooded sweatshirt with a couple water bottles in his hand or whatever. So I actually would not hate that either. Just because, yes, he is somebody who's done it before. Yes, he did it at the college level with Nick Saban. There's a pretty good track record generally for guys like that. I also don't hate the Bob Chesney idea, but I think they might view the job as a little bit too big for Bob Chesney. So if I am betting right now, the guy that I am still betting on is probably Brian Hartline from Ohio State.
Okay.
I think they would bring him in under the condition that he has to surround himself with like an associate head coach who has a little bit more experience running a program so that he can, almost have somebody that can mentor him through this. That would be my bet right now. But I know for sure that they're casting a very wide net. I know for sure that, again, they view this as the type of job that is one of the premier jobs in the country. And ideally, they would like to get somebody in there who has done it before. It's just we're running short on names on those guys, right?
It's going to be fascinating to watch how it all plays out. I appreciate you giving us scoops on the Franklin experience. I will let you know how it goes along the way. I'm sure there will be ups. I'm sure there will be downs.
Let's do it again, man. Next year, let's do it.
I will give you an update on where we are. Please check out Solid Verbal. We'll have them linked in the description. As always, they do a fantastic job on my rotation every single week. Keep up the awesome job and get back. You're submitting some week. Like, I think you miss naming the weeks because you'll chime in with one at the end of the week. You're like, you know what? This one would have been a good one. Well, you shouldn't have given up the reins.
I know. So here's what happened. I don't want to drone on too long, but we have this little bit. We've had this bit for the last couple of years. We noticed that ESPN would name every Saturday. Well, not every Saturday, but they would name select Saturdays. Separation Saturday, Statement Saturday, Show Me Saturday. Just like very uncreative labels for some bigger college football weekend. So we took that, we ran with it, we give them ridiculous names. For a long time, Dan and I were both contributing names. And what would happen is the beginning, like the intro of our podcasts would go 15 minutes and it would be us arguing about names. And so rather than do that, because we always have so much to talk about on a Thursday when we're previewing a week, rather than do that, I just said to Dan, why don't you just take it this year? Why don't you just do it? You're better at it most of the time than I am. And that way we don't have this thing and we can get a little bit more into the meat of the week and not scare people away with our drivel. And so that's why we've been doing what we're doing. I do miss it a little bit, but only on the weeks where I feel like I have a good name. Most of the time, he's still better at it, but I have been trying to chime in just a little bit, just little barbs here and there if I think I have a better idea.
Verballers, let us know in the comments if you do miss the back and forth. I'm going to let you go. I know you got a lot going on this afternoon. Best of luck with the coaching search. It feels great to be out of it, and I'm sorry that we took the best candidate away from you at Penn State. So check out Solid Verbal, and appreciate you coming on. We'll do it again soon, Ty.
Thanks, man. Enjoy James Franklin.
We will.